Anyway, so I've been thinking about this podcast. And here's the current situation about the podcast. I have about 2.5 weeks until I travel again. Maybe I should open up the calendar here and demonstrate to you guys. If you look at the calendar here, you'll notice that right here, it's the 20th. Man, this is a big screen. I never realized how big this new monitor is. So it's the 20th today. I'm not traveling until right here, the 5th. So I have about, I don't know, two weeks or so, 2 weeks until I have to go anywhere. So I'm working on the details of the podcast currently. So, and Magic Mosh should cut this and put this on YouTube later. So here's the current strategy when it comes to the podcast. I need to do a couple of things. First of all, I need to come up with a name. I'm going to Thunderstruck. Yes, for those of you guys asking, I'm going to Thunderstruck. That's why I'll be there. Here's the current strategy. Current status, right? I need to come up with a name. Second thing I need to do is ask Sydney, who made this nice image over here and has also made this image right here and the image that's on my shirt, to help me with the podcast layout. And I also need new layouts in general for the stream, right? Because this current layout is probably not the best thing. I need a new layout for my thing, so I'm going to hit up her. I need to make a name for the podcast, but here's the current plan for the podcast, right? Let's cut through all that. Current plan for the podcast is I don't get to... I'm not home all the time, so it needs to be a podcast that I can sit down and shoot it, right? That needs to be the plan for the podcast. So the idea that I have is that I will, I will sit down and be shooting these podcasts and like doing all this stuff when I have chances to be home. So the goal is to do about an hour podcast. I'll have a rotating guest on each of the podcasts. I don't think I'm going to have a set person to have on there all the time. That's the current play. I've thought about some people I want to ask to be on the show already, and it'll probably be mostly fighting game related, although there will be times when I ask other people to come on and do it. My goal is to try to have it out, I think, at least weekly. There will be times where I won't be home that often, so I won't always be able to like sit down and shoot podcasts each week. So sometimes I will probably have to film one or two and then release them like that. I'm also interested in getting recording equipment so that I can do it while I travel. So there are times where I'm sure that I won't be home for a while and it'll be hard for me to do stuff like the podcast, and maybe I couldn't record something in advance. So I was talking to Born Free at SCR about the equipment he uses when he travels and records, and I think that's what I'm gonna do. Purchase like some handheld equipment, maybe not even a camera, maybe even just like a recording device, and or a couple of lav mics, and like just set up something and do podcasting on the road. And then I'll take the audio file, I'll put it onto my laptop, my Surface, and then send it to maybe Magic Moss, or maybe I can just upload it myself. And all I'll do is, like, if that one, let's say I don't have video, all I'll do is put this picture on here, and I'll just have the audio in the background, right? Or whatever the podcast slide is, right? So that, even if there's no audio, or even if there's no video, you guys at least get an audio podcast. When I'm home, I'll likely do it through Discord or Skype, whatever one is easier. I'll probably try them both. And, that's the plan for it. Am I going to put it on iTunes or SoundCloud? I would like to, because people have asked me to. I don't know how hard it is to get a podcast approved for SoundCloud or iTunes. Can I believe Sajam's going to shill his SoundCloud on Twitter? I don't think I want to do it on SoundCloud. SoundCloud is free. Okay, that's good. I guess I'm going to have a SoundCloud. It's just my own project, and I'm going to have to spend a little bit of money to... I'm going to have to spend a little bit of money to purchase handheld equipment, right? I'm going to probably spend a couple $100, at least on either on lav mics or like a recording device. I need one of the other. I'm going to have to spend some money on buying whatever it's called, or paying for new slides and a podcast layout once I decide on the name. Make the RSS feed public. so they can import the feed in podcast apps. Gotcha. This is the kind of information I need to know, because I don't listen to very many podcasts. When I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my podcast, I actually started listening to podcasts so that I could figure out what I'm supposed to do. And I just listen to them on YouTube, right? Because I just use YouTube for whatever. You're going to have to pay for SoundCloud after 5 episodes if they're 1 hour each. Okay. See, this is the stuff I don't know, right? I'm going to have to pay for something somewhere. That's for sure. I don't know what I'm going to have to pay for, but I'm going to have to pay for something. Right? So yeah, I'd like to do podcasts more. I'm going to be shooting some more videos like I did the other day where I sit down and just discuss topics. I'm going to try to do at least one of those a week, maybe. That's what I'd like to do. I shot one this week, but my editing software died on me, so I had to figure out a new editing software. And by the time I figured it out, I was like, I could just stream and talk to people about that instead. Do you think you'll have enough to talk about even though we're pretty close to the end of the FGC season? See, this is exactly what I mean. Yeah, even though we're close to the end of the FGC season, there's 2 things, right? One is that once we get towards December, the seasons are ending. We're going to have the finals for Tekken. We're going to have the finals for Street Fighter. We'll have the finals for Injustice. January is going to be the finals for Dragon Ball. All of that is coming up, right? February is EVO Japan. And March is the start of the tournament season, right? So there's really not that much downtime. And you have to remember as well is that there's more to fighting games than just the active events. There's stories about the past. There's the backgrounds of players. There's interesting, like, one of the questions I get asked the most is like, when did you start doing commentary? And it doesn't matter what time of the year it is. That kind of stuff is always valuable and interesting to talk about. And my plan is I need to figure out how to monetize this podcast properly. Because what I'd like to do with this podcast, first of all, is I have to pay to host it on whatever sites I have to do it on. And second of all, I would like to use the money from this podcast for 2 things. One, I would like to use it to buy additional recording equipment so that I can shoot it while I'm traveling. And 2, I would like to use this podcast as a way to send players to events. So my idea for this podcast is that occasionally the podcast will have a guest who the Hoop Squad is sending to an event, right? Is the idea behind the podcast. So the idea for the podcast is like, let's say that I'm sending, Johnny Donuts to an event. So Johnny Donuts is who we're sending to an event, right? I'm sending them to see Otaku this weekend. So I'll have Johnny Donuts on the podcast. We'll discuss with them, be like, yo, we're going to send you to see Otaku. It's going to be tight. Tell me about your background. Why should people root for you this weekend? Best of luck. Send them to the tournament, right? That's sort of the idea that I have about some of the ways to use the podcast for episodes, right? Other ideas that I had is I want to talk to more than just players, because I think players get interviewed a lot. And I don't think commentators get interviewed as much. I don't think people who do production get interviewed as much. I don't think tournament organizers get interviewed as much. I don't think people who do a lot of interesting stuff in the scene get interviewed as much as, like, Justin Wong's been interviewed 1,000,000 times in his life, right? How many times has Justin Wong been interviewed in general? A bajillion times. But, like, how many times have you heard, like, Majin Obama or Tasty Steve get interviewed, right? That to me is, like, interesting. Or yeah, like Chris Seglia, who does. I imagine most people in this chat room probably don't even know who that is, even though I talk about him a fair amount, and he does all the production for every event. Seglia and his team do EVO, they do Capcom Cup, they do Capcom Pro Tour, they do Tekken World Tour, they do Dragon Ball World Tour, they do the Tekken World Tour Finals. They do, like, basically everything you watch in fighting. They Combo Breaker and CEO. They do those as well, all the other streams. So, like, they basically do everything that you watch in fighting games that's not on Spooky's channel or, like, Beefuteki's channel or, like, Funky P or Callisto. Even though almost all of them also stream for Tenno, right? Isn't Chris Segway your alternate ego? Almost. So, yeah. Thing about those sponsors that they approach you after you have a following. I'm a professional. I know how to work with sponsors. Don't worry about me. I'll figure that out. I know how to get sponsors on my side. I'll figure that part out, right? All I need to do is figure out the, what's it called? I need to figure out the format, how to do it on SoundCloud or what's it called? iTunes or whatever else you guys recommended. I need to figure out that part about it. I need to figure out the traveling equipment that I need. I've asked a few people for recommendations, and I'm gonna start to do some research into that. And whatever other like places you put podcasts. I don't really listen to podcasts, to be honest with you. I think there's more people than me that can make a podcast work. And I also think that Super Shayla is very kind to give me the Twitch Prime sub. Thanks very much for the subscription. I think there's more people than me that could do this, but I think in general there's not enough content that I like to devour in fighting games. So I'd like to make something that I've wanted to see for a while. That's sort of what I'm thinking when it comes to this kind of content, because I think there's a lot of FGC content that I want to consume, but it's not exactly what I want, right? You know what I mean? It's not exactly where it needs to be. That's part of the reason I started doing commentary, is because there was a lot of things I liked about commentary, but there's a lot of things I wanted to be better. And I was like, I should just fix this. So that was sort of my thought process. I'm like the reverse stream monster. Instead of being like in the chat like, fuck this, I hate this, I'm like, you know what I should do? Should I actually put work in towards improving what's happening on the screen here? Instead of being a fucking nerd like everybody else. I always get message. Hey man, I was on Tekken and all I did was say that Eris is the best commentator and that everybody else that ever commentated should just go die in a fire, and they banned me. So I don't really think I did anything wrong. Can you like unban me from Capcom Fighters and Tekken and Spooky and your channel? Thanks. I'm like, what? Fuck did you message me for? Like, I always get messages like that. I'm like, well, I'm not even in the channel right now. I'm just like online on Twitch. I was talking to Ricksta about that yesterday. That's crazy. Hey man, all I did was say that I hope the streamer of that channel dies, and like they said that they like banned me. I don't understand what I did. I'm actually an awful moderator because I never ban people. I only unban people. I'm like the person you go to. I'm like that guy, right? I'm just there to watch the entertainment, right? I'm like awful. You know what I mean? I'm like awful. I'm not a great mod. I'll ban like the obvious copy pastas, and I'll ban like the obvious fucking, dumb shit. But in general, I don't ban a lot of people for being stupid unless they say stupid ass shit. Yeah, in general, top players are bad. Dude, there was one time, actually, though, I was a mod on Dragon Ball FighterZ, and I was the only mod. And I was, like, commentating and banning people in the chat at the same time because there was they were all posting giant Ricksta shitting Mario dicks and stuff. I was like, this is the worst. And there was, like, no other mods because the channel was, like, brand new. So it's just giant phallic images and like Goku, and I was like, oh fuck. And I was like, banning while I was commenting. I was like, it's the 2H, and I'm like fucking, I was like, this is not good. I'm like, why are they posting this shit? I was like, oh man, I can commentate most of the games that I commentate without looking at the screen, just based on audio alone. So I have to do that sometimes. I'll be moderating the chat. I'm like, ugh. It's a 2H, all right.